Now, a while ago I made a video called Why Frieren is Trash, back when only 13 episodes were out. With the benefit of hindsight, now that the full show is out, was I perhaps a bit harsh? No. But what's fair is fair, so I gotta say, the first episode is kinda good. Probably why it fooled so many people. It's nice and contained, it delivers some quality by itself, it doesn't expect you to watch the rest of the show to come out with something, and it also sets up plenty for you to wanna come back to keep watching. It's some nice stuff. Reminds me of Sword Art Online, nice strong first episode, falls off a cliff after, generic fantasy tropes, blend MC for you to project yourself over. They got a lot in common. The show starts with Frieren and her squad coming back to the royal capital after defeating the Demon King. We know that because the four of them tell us so. Given that it's the first 12 seconds, I'd normally be fine with some exposition. I wouldn't be happy about it, but it's fine. But this is the first of many examples of the dialogue being goddamn atrocious. Hero Guy says that they will soon need to look for work. If it was just him going like, hey guys, what kind of quest would you like? And they went like, yo, don't you wanna take a break? I'd pass it off as a bit of character building. Quite nice actually. Bit basic, but better than the standard of this show. But instead, it's just an excuse for him to go like, well, defeating the Demon King was just a chapter in our lives. So this is their attempt at casually giving us their backstory. Next, there's a joke about the priest of the party being a drunkard, so by extension a shitty priest, which is a joke they'll make a lot, like every second time he's on the screen. And then Hero Guy points out that Frieren's life will be much longer than any of theirs, which is in some ways another instance of them casually dropping us some plot relevant info, but it does set up the tone of the show quite well. People dying and her having to live on is the running theme of the show. I quite enjoy that they insert this so early in the show. I also quite like how the first time we ever see Frieren, she's reading a book, ignoring the world around her. So one of her friends has to nudge her to look up and see that they are reaching their destination. May or may not have been intentional, but the symbolism is there. Now, you might be saying I'm complaining too much, it's just the first minute. But I'm complaining this much because it's the first minute. Getting it right is very important, especially since we get very little over the next 5 minutes. The party enters the city, we get some shots of a parade, the king thanks them, then they go to chill over some drinks, so of course we get another corrupt priest joke. Next they look back on their adventure and we get a few random moments that are kinda pointless. They mention how the king wasn't particularly helpful when they set off, all in giving them 10 copper coins. I bet it wasn't even good copper, fucking Yanashir. And that bit is arguably plot relevant, it answers some questions you might have later on, but other than that, it's stories where if I was there when it happened, I might also look back on it fondly. But as an audience member, they are kind of whatever. Man, remember that time Frieren got stuck in a mimic? Man, remember that time Priest Guy had a hangover? I do think these stories are useful. They give us some substance to their journey. They give us a feel for it, and it makes it seem more real, more tangible. I just think the stories themselves are a bit meh. Nothing wrong with this kind of moment, but it would have been better if the stories were fun for us as well. Next, the party watches a meteor shower. Frieren says that the view there is bad and that she knows a better spot to watch it, so they decide to go there in 50 years when the meteor shower comes back around. Then Frieren leaves and we get a montage of her doing seemingly random shit for the previously mentioned 50 years. Mother of time skips, Jesus. The fuck is this, dude? Later on, she remembers that Hero Guy had some mob drop she wants for non-important reasons. She says she needs for a spell, but we never see her use that spell. Quality content right here. She also remembers that the meteor shower is coming up, so she goes back to the capital. There she finds the Hero Guy old and really short for some reason. Probably just meant to be funny, I don't think this is plot relevant. She takes the horn and makes a comment about how it wasn't that important of a thing, though Hero Guy did see it as important because she gave it to him. The dialogue itself is a bit spotty, but this exchange is important. It tells us more about these two and their relation. The gang then gets together and they set off to the place Frieren recommended to go see the meteor shower, meaning another montage of them walking around, but this time we get a voiceover from Hero Guy, being nice and nostalgic, looking over a life well lived. To get us nice and ready for the next scene, Her home was fucking dead! At his funeral, some random peasants complained that Frieren doesn't look sad enough to them, which seems to be played off as justification for some character development on Frieren's part while they're burying him. She says how she never really knew him, how she only spent a bit of time with him, in elf terms that is, but she's crying during that. She talks about how she regrets not trying to know him better, so this is supposed to be the moment she decided to change her dismissive way of being, but it's hard to buy it. This is still the first episode. We hardly know her, and a bit too much emphasis was put on what those chicks said. A better interpretation of this scene is that what finally got her is the hero's death. But if that is so, it would have been a better idea to not have those comments at all and have her talk more about Homeboy being fucking dead. But all we get is like 3 lines. That ain't a lot to justify her change of heart. We spend more time on a montage of her doing random shit that won't come up again. Priorities much? What is very useful here though is that the hero's death is just said. He died, but he died of old age, presumably. They don't say, but if somebody got him they would have probably mentioned it. He wasn't killed by someone or something, he just died. So you can't be clouded by anger towards who did it. You're only left with sadness. As much sadness as you can have for a guy you knew for like 12 minutes. The remaining party members say their goodbyes, we get another "you corrupt priest" joke. He talks a bit about not being afraid of death, then another corrupt priest joke, and then he leaves. Then Frieren goes to leave as well. The dwarf asks her if she's going back to collecting spells. She says yes, but that she also wants to learn more about humans. Then she says she wanted to ask him if he wants to go along. She was already leaving. I guess she forgot, but it just makes for bad dialogue. Like, come on. Anyway, he says, no, I'm fucking old. And finally they part ways. We get the title screen, and so ends the first. Oh wait, there's more. This is the thing this show does a lot. They have like multiple episodes per episode. Now, if I was rude, I'd say that it's probably because the author can't do much with any given premise, so to keep people engaged, they needed to up the pacing and splice together multiple of these cores. But, you know, I wouldn't want to be rude. This next part we start with a joke about Frieren being fucking lost and some writing on the screen to let us know 20 years have passed since hero guy died. Truly a masterpiece of storytelling. Luckily, Tiny Purple randomly runs into her, and luck would have it, she lives with Priest Guy, the guy she was looking for. How convenient! Some great writing right here. We get some more corrupt priest jokes and a lore dump of Purple's backstory. Dead parents, he adopted her. She's also a potential mage, so he asks if Frieren will take her in. She says no, she's afraid of getting her killed while in battle. So he asks her to translate a manuscript instead. Some new find said to contain resurrection spells. She says, yeah sure, but why do you care? I thought you weren't afraid of dying. Why wouldn't he care? Even if you're fine dying, you might still have a problem with people around you dying. There also might be other useful spells in there. Hey mate, you wanna know the cure for cancer? Nah, I ain't got cancer. What the fuck's wrong with you? And the reason why she says that is to prompt him to say, I was lying back then, and I'm even more afraid now. If you really need him saying shit like this, have her make a joke instead, like, hey, resurrection spells, eh? So much for no fear of death. To which he can answer very seriously with a yes or something. Still bad? Well, kinda, but at least it actually makes some sense now. Then we get another corrupt priest joke, because of course we do. He also asks her to teach Purple some magic in the meantime. She did say the translation will take like 6 years. She goes to see where Purple usually trains. We get some not so subtle setup about Purple being stealthy. She fires some death ray at a boulder because Priest Guy gave her that target as a goal to reach. But she doesn't yet have the range to hit it, so she asks Frieren for advice. Instead of advice, she goes like, yo, you like magic? To which Purple goes like, fucking kinda, I guess. To which Frieren hits her with a dude same, and the episode finally ends. Jesus, what a clusterfuck. I know it could have been worse. Some of you are probably yelling at me right now, wanting to give me examples of even worse shows. I know there are worse shows, but this one ain't fucking good. This is also probably a good time to let you all know that my mother is a very nice person, so I'd appreciate if you didn't say anything about her in the comments. My father is not, say what you want about him. If you disagree with anything I say, please do share. My last video on Frieren had a 1 to 5 like to dislike ratio, so clearly plenty of people disagree with something I said, but I don't know what because most of the comments I did get were agreeing with me. Please, I want to know, why do people think this thing is good? It's just the first episode and it's already lacking plenty. Also, as a first episode, it suffers a lot from the and then syndrome. They get home, they get a parade, and then they hang out, and then she leaves to do random shit, and then she comes back for a horn, and then they watch a meteor shower, and then he dies, and then another 20 years pass, and then. If the episode ended the second time they parted ways, it'd be fine. Still not great, but at least more streamlined. Ideally, we'd get a full episode with the hero's party in its prime. It can still be after the Demon King is already dead, that's not a problem. What's a bit of a problem is how the show is trying to get us nostalgic over a time that's done and over by minute 8. Or 6:30 if you cut off the intro. Either there just wasn't enough to fill an episode without the bits with purple and they needed to keep the pacing up, because that's the one good thing about this show. The pacing is high enough to where you just keep getting served new random shit before you get a chance to get bored. Either that or they couldn't figure out how to get a decent hook without giving her an apprentice to look over. In their defense, adding a lolly is definitely great for marketing. Purple is what half the memes from Frieren are about. But storytelling wise, it's just way too cluttered. The second episode starts with Frieren giving some advice to Purple. As part of that, she explains to her some of the very basics of their magic system. So that we can hear it. Long range magic is a combination of amount of mana, the strength it's shot with, and the control over it. Now, there's something here that I really like, and that is a fair use of a variation of the phrase, as you know. A lot of poorly written shows and movies have people go like, as you know, and then go into an exposition dump that inward makes no fucking sense. If you both know it already, why the fuck say it? So that the audience learns it, of course. Here, however, is one of the few instances where this phrase makes sense. I did at times teach people some things, and I did explain some basics they might already know, because it's often quicker than asking them if they know it, and then having them say it to make sure, and then potentially having to explain it either way because they didn't actually know it, or they were wrong, or they just didn't understand the question and they knew what I needed them to know but answered with something else. Just explaining it yourself is often quicker. Though even then, I would then ask, you knew that, right? Because if they say, no, actually I did not, that might make me explain it in more detail, or just help me gauge their level of understanding of whatever I'm explaining. All that's to say that I'm really happy that here, they actually had a good reason for people to be saying shit like that. Now, there's also something I am not a fan of. The explanation we get doesn't ever come into play in any really meaningful way. It's occasionally used to let us know that a character or another is supposed to be a badass or whatever, but other than that, we don't really lose much if we never got this explanation. I do like mere hard magic system. I ain't a fan of shows where anything can happen because there's fuck all rules. But this explanation doesn't really help towards that either. When any character can have whatever amount of all three of those the plot needs him to have, that rule hardly matters. Even more so when the spells are very random and new ones keep popping up that do whatever all the time. But this discussion is better had as a retrospective at the end of the show, so more on that later. This episode doesn't cover the entire show, but I will talk more about things like this at the end of the video. Point is, they gave us this but never actually did something with it. Frieren tells Purple that her control is good, so she needs more mana amount of power, which just come with time and training. So of course we get another montage that covers like 4 years in 2 minutes. God, I hate these hard cuts. The priest guy talks a bit, falls, so now he's immobile. Frieren talks with Purple a bit, she's angry she didn't hit the rock yet, and now another montage that skips over a few more goddamn fucking years. I do understand their utility. I do. But it's just too much at this point. A minute into the second episode and we're already at the fourth hard skip. First one was 50 years after the meteor shower. Then there was a soft time skip, because in one scene the hero's alive and in the next one we're at his funeral, so it's unclear how much time passed. Then we had another 20 years time skip, another 4 at the start of this episode, and now another one. It's a bit much. Frieren's done with translating. The book had no resurrection spells. Priest guy expected this, saying, the fear of death is immeasurable. If such spells existed, Ewig, the guy in the tomb this was discovered in, would have cast them on himself. This, in the moment, did feel like one of those, oh, of course moments. But then you think about it, and how the fuck do you cast a resurrection spell on yourself? Ain't you fucking dead at that point? Don't you need others to do that for you? People that might not want to do that for you once you're dead? And even then, we're not told how long Homeboy lived for. Maybe he was alive for like 1,000 years and got really tired of it. Plenty of stories about immortality, I like that. So no, this doesn't check out. He then asks how Purple training is going, and she says that she's more or less a proper mage now. So he says, neat, now she won't get in your way, revealing that his plan all along was to get Purple ready for her to go along with Frieren, which is nice and dandy, but we then get a flashback to back when he asked Frieren if she'll take her in. That was like 10 minutes ago. And we get a fucking flashback? Just in case we can't put 2 and 2 together? Granted, if you don't binge the show, more time may have passed. But still, that was at the end of the last episode. Have some fucking respect for your audience. Jesus, they actually catered it for dumbasses. Frieren agrees to take her in, and he asks her to leave tonight because he'll probably die soon, and doesn't want Purple to deal with that again. Frieren protests and says what he should really do is have a proper farewell instead. Which I guess they do, but we don't really get to see that. We're shown them talking, but we only get to hear some music. We don't know what they said. Which is such a cop-out. What do people say to each other when one's about to die can do a lot for a characterization. And we don't get shit. In the next scene, he's already 6 feet under. They skipped over the hero's death. They skipped over Priest Guy's death. I'm starting to think the author just doesn't know how to write those scenes. So now that he's dead, Frieren pulls one out over his grave, something he asked for earlier on. We get another You Corrupt Priest, and they are off to collect some pumpkins. That's how adventuring goes, or so she says. As a reward, they get a spell that makes tea, which I kinda like. We actually get to see her being happy about some spells that do some fairly menial things. They also mention a spell that makes grapes sour, which is such a dumb setup for a future scene, and also a spell that removes rust from bronze statues. Bronze doesn't rust. I hope this is a translation error. Then they go to a village, a woman asks them to clean a statue, and the rest of the episode covers the next 6 months they spent looking for a flower, which they want to plant a field of around the statue. Well, to be specific, the episode only really covers like a day, but there's a 6-month time skip in the middle, because of course there is. In the end, after 6 months, they follow a nut squirrel to see where it goes to hide some seeds it took from them. Seeds out for peanuts, man. Rest in peace, Fred. Now, I guess it's a plan worth trying, but it's been like 6 months. You knew they hide seeds and didn't think to follow one so far? The nut squirrel goes on top of a tower, so when these two get there, they see the entire top of the tower covered in the one flower they were looking for. First of all, there ain't no way the entire thing is covered in flowers. Assuming the wooden floor of the higher levels didn't rot away and fall, some dirt may build up on top, enough for something to grow. But this thing is covered in flowers. Did somebody dump a bunch of dirt up there? Also, the takeaway is that the nut squirrel took some seeds there, and that's why the flowers are there. Why is there only one type of flower up there? It didn't bring any other seeds there? Now, both of those are just visual things. A small change is all they need for this to go away. But what isn't a visual only problem is them only now finding that patch of flowers. It's been 6 months. They can both fly. The first thing you'd expect them to do is do a flyover, which is something they do in a future episode when they're looking for something else. When doing so, that tower would stick out like a sore thumb. I wouldn't necessarily expect flowers to be there either, but I would at least check it out. Partly because, why the fuck is there a tower in the middle of buttfuck nowhere? I asked around and there's a few cases when it makes sense to have a tower separated from other structures, but I couldn't find any that applies here, even ignoring the fantasy setting and the fact that Frieren's hobby is to look for magical spells, something you might find in a stone tower. If I see a stone tower in the forest, I'm checking it out. We also get a flashback to back when Hero Guy complimented the spell Frieren cast, and the shot of Priest Guy and the dwarf running around like little children making flower crowns for each other, which apparently is a thing everybody in this world knows how to do. Now, with the flower acquired, they can finally spawn a field of it around the statue, and so ends episode 2. Such quality content. I just don't understand what people see in this thing. So far there weren't huge problems, but that's because not much happened. Episode 3 starts with Frieren shopping for a gift to give Purple. She's also looking for a place to buy some cake for her birthday. A joke is attempted. We get some shots trying to paint these guys as menacing, So clearly not the right place to ask about desserts. We know as much because Purple says it. And surprise, surprise, they do actually recommend the place. I get that humor is subjective, but this is just bad. The scene is dragged out like crazy, and they even have Purple outright explain the setup. Comedy in general is just not done well in this show. They go to the shop, Frieren has a flashback and you get another corrupt priest joke. We technically get a payoff for the mention of the spell that makes grapes sour, because the dwarf mentions that he likes sour grapes, but this will come up again later in the montage, so I'll be honest, I'm not sure why this scene got on my nerves so much, but it's just such stupid thing. We also finally get a bit more about Frieren trying to change herself and be more aware of people. She mentions in the flashback that she doesn't know much about any of them, and she apologizes to Purple for not knowing what to get her as a present, which I kinda like. People don't change overnight, especially 1,000-year-old elves, but this character development of hers will soon be dropped. They'll just kinda stop talking about it. Next we get a bit of a training sequence. Frieren shows Purple that magical shields have gaps in them that you can aim for. This information will never become useful. They go to a village and some throwaway character recognizes Frieren. And she's like, oh, wow, how'd you know? You're one of the 3 fucking elves we ever get to see in this fucking show. Your kind ain't common. And you're part of the squad that killed the Demon King, which seems to have been a problem for like 1,000 years. I'd be surprised if people didn't know you, which is actually a thing. She just goes about doing stuff and rarely, if ever, does anybody say something about her. Sure, let's say they don't know jack about history. They did kill that demon like 70 years ago. She's still a bloody elf. A white-haired one. You'd think more people would say something, but it just never comes up. The guy reveals that he was there the last time Frieren came by and sealed away some big shot demon guy, and she's back now because the seal's about to break. Subtle word building right there. Apparently, he was too strong for her to kill, but she could seal it away somehow. Not sure how that makes sense, but sure, let's go with that. Something I have a bigger problem with that I can't just ignore is, why does Homeboy look like that? They even draw attention to it. Purple grabs her robe seemingly in distress when she sees it for the first time. We aren't told this yet, but in this world, demons are man-eating monsters that hunt by mimicking humans. So they evolve to look like humans, act like humans, talk like humans. So why does Homeboy look like that? Answer is, who the fuck knows? They don't even mention it. Oh, by the way, he wanted to strike fear in the heart of mortals, so he made himself look like that. They just take it as granted. And that, as well as the fact that it's really early on in the story, leads me to believe that this was probably written before the author even thought about the lore of these guys. Why does Homeboy look like that? Why wouldn't he look like that? It's not like there's lore saying he shouldn't. It's the only thing that really makes sense to me. Before they break the seal, Frieren builds him up to have this badass spell he invented that can pierce defensive magic. But then they break the seal to reveal that his spell is actually kinda lame now, prompting Frieren to go into a lore dump about how humans are very crafty, so they took that spell of his, studied it, and then made both defensive spells that can take it, and just better version of it that can hit even harder, suffering from success. This would be a bit of nice world building. It's a bit of a setup that you could use to explain some problems that arise when you have an immortal elf. Why isn't she well above everyone else in the world? Well, because the world changes all the time. So if she doesn't stay up to date, she doesn't actually have that much of a leg up. Man from Earth did a bit of that. Nice movie, I do recommend it. Better than this thing anyway. But unfortunately, they never really do much with that. There aren't really ever situations where this information is all that important. This, again, feels like the author didn't really think ahead. Like, he did set this up to use later. He just never got around to that using it later part. Demon Guy figures out fairly quickly that defensive magic uses up a lot of mana. How does he figure this out? Well, he's just built different, I guess. A battle starts and is just really fucking lame. The idea here is that to conserve mana, you must only create a shield where it's needed to block incoming attacks. But what we are actually shown is Purple casting a static random patchwork of shields, and Demon Guy apparently aims for said shields. She doesn't cast them at the last moment when she figures out where they're going to land. She doesn't move them either. She just makes them and all the attacks just hit them specifically? Best show ever. This is like melee fights where people aim for weapons, not people, but turned up to 11. The fight is ended in one attack from Frieren, casting Demon Guy's own spell against him, which in some other situations would have been poetic justice and shit. Here, however, it really doesn't land particularly well. We've known this guy for like 5 minutes. Bit hard to care about him. Then there's the joke about the skirt trip. I'd really be curious if there's people who actually found this funny. There must be, but I'm curious to talk to them. Apparently, she recognizes this guy because of his hat. Has he been wearing that same hat for the past 8 years? He does say, oh, all farmers wear these, so probably not the same hat. But if they are common, it's rather odd that she recognized him for a hat a lot of people wear. It's just one of those things that doesn't really add up. Best show ever, everybody. What even was this episode? First half, they buy a hair clip and some cake. Second half, they unfreeze some motherfucker and shoot him once. That's the episode. And this is the decent part. It gets worse. Episode 4 is about cleaning the beach of random junk that comes ashore. We get a bit of world building. That's nice. Too bad the dialogue is still horrible. Throwaway character number 2 gives them a book written by Flamen if they clean out the beach. Purple says that Grimar is fake, isn't it? And Frieren says books attributed to Flamen are never real. This is just another poor imitation. Just have her say it's Flamen, of course it's fake. Same information, way closer to how people actually talk. Let's play a game now. What comes next? A time skip, a corrupt priest joke, or is it something actually interesting? A time skip. We get a 3-month time skip. Another running gag of the show is Frieren not being a morning person. This time I'm actually not trying to be rude when I'm saying that I'm not sure if this is even supposed to be funny. The author of Garfield said once that he never really tried to be funny in those comics. Just relatable. I think it's a similar thing going on here. Not sure if relatable is what they went for here, but I really don't think it was humor. Perhaps they're trying to make her be similar to a cat? All sleepy and stuff and hating the cold. They talk for a bit. Then we get a montage of them cleaning the aforementioned beach. The long and short of it is that the last time she was here, she overslept and didn't participate in the sunrise viewing New Year festival. And this time she wants to, because of her whole knowing people thing. And for once they're actually a bit subtle about it. Because Purple asks if she got in trouble with the hero's party for oversleeping. She says only once. Then she mentions how the last time she was here, she overslept, so she didn't get to see the sunrise. And the show has the decency of letting us put 2 and 2 together this time. It does spell it out a minute later, right before another corrupt priest joke, but at least this time they actually gave you the chance of figuring out something yourself. Improvements, everybody, improvements. They watch the sunrise, have a moment, and we move on to the next episode within episode. This one starts with a discussion about death and afterlife, which I kinda like. Man, if only they did not another goddamn you corrupt priest joke. Way to ruin a good thing. There's nothing too deep here. But none of the characters are supposed to be particularly deep. So it's fine. She comes to visit the dwarf, they talk for a bit, she offers to help him if he needs anything, so they go to some forest. And then there's a joke that I actually laughed at. Wait to go. Then Frieren asks, so anyway, what are we looking for? You left from the guy's house, presumably by wagon given this shot, traveled God knows how much, entered some random forest, and now you're asking that? Apparently they're looking for Flamen's notes, so Frieren says to look for a big tree, and now it's montage time, after which they find the tree. Riveting stuff. The dwarf tells Frieren that he's looking for the notes to help her get to know the heroes better. And Frieren has a flashback with Flamen, her old master, where she tells her that someday you'll make a terrible mistake and wish you'd gotten to know people better. Wow, what a coincidence! And it only took like 1,000 years for that to happen. When that happens, return to this place. That's the one reason she has to come here? Really? Greatest show ever, everybody. They go inside and find the book. Does it say anything about speaking to the dead? It's already open to that page. Why would that be the only reason to come here? Later on in a different flashback, Flamen says Frieren will be the one to defeat the Demon King. You didn't expect her to drop by before that? It's not like she's some truly OP mage. She often talks about how there are human mages that could defeat her in battle. There was also that demon monster guy last episode that was too strong for her back when she first fought it. So she had to seal it away instead. You don't reckon she might have been like, yo, maybe the Demon King ain't a cakewalk. Should I go to get my master notes to see if she got some tips? Nah, she even knew where they were. Priest guy had to go figure it out. But then Dwarf says, they are somewhere here. You must know that. So seemingly she knew where they were. You could say, well, she already knew everything her master had to teach her. But evidently not, cause this thing about speaking to the dead, she had no idea about. This the one thing she didn't mention? Why would that be? You might also say, well, maybe they were in a hurry. It took them 10 years to get to the Demon King. And all of her flashbacks are about stopping to do some random shit in some random town. So they had plenty of time. We also get this incredible piece of subtle world building from Purple. Flamen, the legendary mage, is an ancient hero who's written about in magical histories. Best show ever, everybody. Apparently there's a place on Earth where souls go after that. I hope they mean that's a place where you can speak to them, not that they actually just go there. The northern continent, Ende. You get it? Cause like Eden, but Ende. Yeah. Look, stuff like this is actually kinda cool when it's a tad more subtle. A Song of Ice and Fire is full of little hints like this, but this one is a bit on the nose. Anyway, apparently that's where the Demon King had his castle. Jesus, how evil do you gotta be to turn the place purple? The dwarf tells her to go there and speak to the hero, and she's like, sure, I wasn't doing anything. Such intrigue, much wow. They leave, talk for a bit more, we get another Yukora priest joke, they part ways and the episode ends. They also mention that they'll be retracing the journey she had with the hero, which would be more relevant if they weren't already kinda doing that. She said in an earlier episode that she wants to visit places they've been to before our traces of the hero fade. And we've also been getting flashbacks to hell and back. So it's just not like anything changes from here out. Now, we're in episode 5, minute 5. Why did I skip to here? I didn't. There was the intro, and before that they repeated some scenes from the last episode. Purple dreams about Priest Guy, and then they go to some village. Throwaway character number 3 tells them to avoid the mountain pass because a bunch of people went missing. They contracted a case of ghosts, apparently. They decide to gather more information, so they go and talk to a bunch of people in the area. After which Purple... Wait, what? They skipped it? Random chats with random people from the area are some of the best opportunities for world building. You can do so much with so little. Tiny throwaway lines with huge implications, getting a feel for how they view life at the most basic level, how their religion influences their actions, their cultures, their laws, their customs. You get an excuse to have people throw in their view on ghosts, and by extension the afterlife, and you don't use it? And this is not even the only time they do something like this, when they create an amazing opportunity for world building and storytelling and they just waste it. To summarize, people saw the ghosts of dead family as they appeared in life. Some claim the ghosts spoke to them. That's what we get? This is almost not even needed. This is the sort of thing you'd expect when people say they saw ghosts. These aren't undead, those are corpses controlled by magic. Another case of information we kinda don't need, served in the worst way. They believe it to be some man-eating monster that casts illusion magic. You know, in just about any other show they would play far more into the mystery aspect of dealing with a bloody mimic creature. This is like Made in Abyss all over again, I swear to God. Here, however, they know what it is, and it all comes down to whether or not you could shoot an illusion of your loved ones. This was probably an attempt at making them badass or whatever, but it's executed incredibly bad. They talk way too much about this, because show don't tell is a hard concept to grasp apparently. They go into this knowing it's a bloody mimic, which takes away greatly from this. Usually, a big part of coming off as a badass when dealing with a Wendigo, is having the clarity of mind to realize that what you see just can't be real. They know that from the get-go here, so that falls flat. Purple is the first to see a not ghost. She hesitates, then Frieren sees hers and she shoots fairly quickly. Oh, and she also makes sure that cartographers in the area have something to do. Jesus, chill. The nut Windigo becomes visible and Purple shoots it. That's it. Then they move on. Minute 5:30 is the first we hear of the ghosts. Minute 11:30, ghosts are done with. Homeboy took the idea of a mimic type creature, of which there's many examples, and deals with it in 6 bloody minutes, half of which is either a montage or exposition. Best show ever, holy shit. You own an apology to the writer of Stolen Tongues. Most of this show makes me angry, but it just makes me sad. What is this? Don't go to the mountains. There's ghosts there. Goes to the mountains, shoots ghosts. That's the episode. Well, half of an episode. It's a manga chapter, which they cover in its entirety. Not that it's hard, it's only like 20 pages. How can you decide to write your take on a mimic and be done in 20 pages? I don't get it. You know how I was saying that the show suffers from the and then syndrome? Well, this time it's and then a dragon. Because wasting one mythical creature in this episode wasn't enough. They see a dragon, and in its nest, there's a book Frieren wants. Now, that pile he made is very bird nest shaped, but for some reason Homeboy's sleeping in front of it. It's like sleeping next to your bed on the floor. Why? You might say, well, he seems too big for that nest. But that makes even less sense. Birds make their nests to lay their eggs in and then sit on top of them to keep them warm. So why does Homeboy not fit in his own nest? I guess this is more of a take on dragons and their treasure piles. But then why is it bird nest shaped? What is this? I get that he needed Frieren to be able to see the book. But then just have a pile of things. Why is it a nest? Frieren says that they should probably kill it. So Purple shoots it and it seemingly does nothing. Homeboy wakes up, they fucking book it, and Frieren's bright idea is to just do that again until he's dead. Now, it's not a horrible plan. It might work if the dragon doesn't kill them first. But at least try to think of something better. Thankfully, Purple's take on that plan is fuck no, to which Frieren says, of course, mages don't play tag with dragons. Which, this may sound very pedantic, but there's just something really off about this line. And I'm not sure what. I think it's a matter of the line being very out of character for her. Maybe? Normally she's very socially inept, but here it seems like she's politely pretending like there's a different reason to not do something Purple is afraid to participate in. It just does not feel like something she would actually say. Usually she's far more direct about things like this. She's the same chick that said that she was used to hearing her master beg for her life like 5 minutes ago. Instead of playing tag with the dragon, she decides instead to go look for a third party member. Luck would have it, they are right next to the city where the dwarf told her to go to get a strong warrior that he trained. How convenient! Purple asks Frieren what kind of spell is in that book, and she says it's a spell to see through clothes. For one, this is a shitty setup for a shitty joke later on. The story would have worked better if she didn't know what's in that book, in my opinion. But also, is there one single spell in that book? Is there only one she doesn't know? Is this the only one she's interested in? These are things that would have been great to be more specific about, but we don't really find out. They never really explain how the wall casting spells thing works. They don't recite incantations most of the time, so that doesn't seem to be part of it. Later on they also talk about how magic is visualization, and if you can imagine yourself doing something, the spell is gonna work. So what exactly does the book explain that a mage needs in order to cast that spell? Who the fuck knows? Throwaway character number 4 comes in to say that Stark would like to meet them. So they go to that. On the way there, she goes into some exposition. Apparently 3 years ago, that dragon from the forest started attacking the city. Stark came in, just stood there, menacingly, and the dragon fucked off? Since then, he's just been hanging out in the city, so the dragon doesn't attack. They meet, Stark mentions how the solar dragon is stronger than you think. Frieren asks for his help in killing the dragon since it's got a book that she wants. He asks why she wants it, and she says, no particular reason, just a hobby. To which logically he goes like, you mad? You wanna fight the dragon for no real reason? And she goes, oh, some idiot complimented my spell once. That a good reason? What the fuck is this dialogue? Throwaway character number 4 just said that the damn thing attacked the city in the past. So firstly, you shouldn't even question her wanting to kill the fucking thing. And second, maybe that should be the reason you give for killing the fucking thing? No? Frieren says she could kill the dragon if Stark keeps it busy for like 30 seconds. Okay, back with the demon guy. She also asked Purple to keep defenses up while she charges up or whatever. So presumably it's the same type of deal, right? She wants to charge up a powerful attack. When they first ran into the dragon, it was sleeping and just laying there. Why not wait for that again? There's no rush. It didn't attack the city in the past 3 years. Wait for it to sleep, sneak up on it as you already did once, charge up an attack, and kill it. Why would you have Stark risk his life fighting that thing? Why didn't you think of this earlier when you mentioned playing tag with it? No, so far he's been acting very badass-ish. And now they pull a quick one on you and reveal that he's actually deathly afraid since he never actually fought anything so far. And back when the dragon attacked and he was just standing there menacingly, he was actually frozen in fear. As always, half decent premise, horrible delivery. Next, Frieren goes and makes sure that we notice the giant cut in the wall. Man, I wonder what that might be, given it's next to a guy with an axe in a magical world. She gives him until tomorrow to decide, not sure why she phrased it like that, and they leave. Oh, you met Stark? He's nice, ain't it? Oh, he really likes my cooking. People really love Stark. Well, he seems like a kind person. I'll admit, on first viewing this wasn't as annoying. But Stark being a nice guy that people like because he helps them is a thing they'll keep insisting on for the rest of the show. And it's never really paid off for anything. It's just a detail they insist on showing again and again. It insists upon itself. Purple just says, kind, he only seemed cowardly to me. Well, those aren't mutually exclusive. And you talked with the guy for like 2 minutes. A lot of people really like Purple. I don't get it. She'd be such a pain to deal with. If you actually look at how she acts, she's never in a good mood. She's really bossy for unclear reasons. She always expects others to please her. But she's a thick god bitch. Freudian slip right there. She's a thick god wish, so people give her a pass. Both out of universe, but within it as well. They go outside, hear a sound, and Frieren goes like, oh, it's probably Stark. Damn, I wonder what she might be referring to. Frieren gets another flashback with Dwarf Guy. He says that Stark was the only one to run away when monsters attacked his village. A coward, he's like me, so I taught him everything I know. Not particularly subtle, but I quite like this characterization for this guy. Partly because I like the message, but also because it feeds into a running theme with Dwarf Guy. There's like 2 other flashbacks where the hero asks him if he's afraid, he says yes, and then he makes a bit of a point about that. Some nice stuff. Now back to this kerfuffle. Turns out it was Stark throwing magical nonsense at the rock and making that cut in the stone. Who could have seen that coming? So this fissure was left by her training. Why is this right here? Why? We just saw that. What on earth is the point of her saying this? I don't understand. Who's she even saying this to? Is this supposed to be a habit of hers? Stating the obvious? With this, the episode ends. But for once, the arc goes on. Only for another half of an episode. This arc is still only 1 episode long, but for whatever reason, half of it is in 1 episode and the other half is in the next one. I'm guessing it's just how it lined up. You don't intend to fight the dragon, so why do you keep training? What a dumb fucking question. Hey, you think you can't beat that guy yet? Why are you trying to get stronger? Yeah, I wonder fucking why. But that's nothing compared to the answer. Check this out. He replies, when I arrived here, all the villagers wore grim expressions and lived in fear of the dragon. Now, those same people are smiling happily. They say this village is safer because I'm around, even though I haven't done anything. The dragon simply hasn't attacked the village yet because it doesn't feel like it. What? How's that an answer? What the fuck is this? There's also again this idea that the dragon didn't attack yet because it doesn't feel like it. Realistically, what we're supposed to interpret is that the dragon didn't attack because it's afraid of Stark. It's a common thing with predatory animals. A lot of them will back off if you stand your ground. And I also get that it's part of the running theme of the episode, so I don't want to be too harsh, because rarely does the show have something like this constructed. But this dialogue He's just bad. He mentions the scar is from his master hitting him, and he assumes it's because the master was disappointed in him. He never complimented him. Purple says she doesn't think he'd run away and goes into a story about the first time she had to fight a monster. She had a lot of training, but when she was face to face with the monster, she just ran away. Frieren didn't want to help her, so in the end she had to face that thing and fight. And it's bits like this that make me really doubt that the writer heard of concepts like planning ahead or redrafting. Or maybe even worse, he just doesn't know any better. We've been with Purple since the beginning. This story of her first master should have 100% been in its chronological place, not served to us now. This is episode 6, manga chapter 10. This isn't years after the first few chapters were written, past the point where it's reasonable to have detailed plans of every aspect of the story. She was a child like 2 episodes ago. Even worse than that, she had to fight a mimic master, flatter, then get over it and go on the offensive last fucking episode. Maybe you should make a reference to that instead of inventing this other monster and showing it for like 30 seconds. Arguably it's better because that wasn't even the first monster she fought, and yet she still seized up. But fine, you really want her to mention her first master? Take that arc and move it back. Then go more in depth about her fear, because God knows that episode needs more depth. And then when you get to this episode, you can reference back to something we actually saw, which at the time we didn't even realize is gonna come up again. This is really basic stuff that doesn't even take away anything from the experience. I would be really curious if nobody suggested this, or if the author had some good reasons to not do that, both in his manga or the anime when it was made. Anime adaptations playing around with the order of events is not unheard of. Goblin Slayer did a bit of that. There it was to have a sort of more epic arc to end the show on. They could have 100% done that here, and I don't understand why they didn't. Next morning they start with a joke that I kinda like, so I'm gonna skip over it. Then after some more bad dialogue, they go to the dragon, who is just standing there, menacingly. Well, how the turntables, I guess. But for real though, what the fuck is it doing? Are we going on RPG logic here? Nobody's in the boss arena yet, so he's just waiting? That it? At least have him nudge at his nest or something. This is embarrassing. Stark jumps in, starts fighting, then Frieren spills the beans on the dragon not attacking because it was cautious. They are smart creatures, it wouldn't pick a fight with a strong opponent. And also the dwarf didn't hit Stark because he was disappointed, but because he was afraid of him. Look, most of this is kinda nice in terms of content and ideas. A master warrior striking his disciple because he managed to scare him and make him move on reflex. That's a great writing prompt. The delivery of that information being character monologuing, not as great. Us not seeing what happened to make the master afraid, also not great. The dragon not attacking because it was afraid, great stuff. And the execution was kinda better, because for one, we actually got to see it, more or less, and we had the time to figure it out ourselves, so Frieren here only makes it clear for the people who didn't yet figure it out, which I'm a fan of usually, because I'm usually part of that crowd. But the problem here is with all those people being like, oh, who knows why the dragon didn't attack? Look, you're just not being as subtle as you think you are. Just cut those lines out, come on, you don't need them. Stark fights the dragon, puts it on his ass, then yells out to Frieren to shoot the bloody thing. But she goes, oh you silly, it's already dead. In all fairness, I kinda like this moment. Him managing to kill it without even realizing. It is actually somewhat realistic to how fights sometimes go, especially when you are still new. Nice job. Then they even have a flashback that has Priest Guy in it, and they don't make a joke about him being corrupt. Well done. That being said, did Frieren actually want to shoot that dragon or not? In the end, she doesn't. But that's supposedly because the dragon was already dead, so there was no point. But there is the setup of Purple mentioning how, with her first master, Frieren didn't help her to force her figure things out. Did she want the same for Stark? In a better written show, that would probably be the takeaway. But here, I'm not so sure. She really seemed to believe she needed someone to keep the dragon busy for like 30 seconds. Otherwise, I'm not sure why they didn't just sneak up on it and do it while it's sleeping or whatever. We also do not see Frieren from the moment the fight starts and until it finishes. Her just sitting very casually without charging anything, maybe even without her wand out, while Stark is still fighting, would be enough to make it clear she actually wanted Stark to do it himself. If that's too subtle for this show's standards, have Purple look over at her and gasp. Though that's the problem, given the lack of subtlety everywhere else in this show. I really doubt that is the intended takeaway. Did she know exactly how strong Stark is? Because we don't. How strong is Stark, really? How strong is the dragon? There's people saying, oh, they are strong. But for one, that's horrible storytelling. And second, that's still very unclear. Early on, we see Stark throw those magic attacks at the rock. Serious question now. Is that supposed to be impressive? Because I don't know. Before this, the only other time we see a melee type fighter is Dwarf guy hitting some dog monster with a stick. So we have no idea how Stark compares. For the standards of our world, doing that shit with an axe is incredible. But maybe for this world it's only like 10% above the average. We don't fucking know. Purple seemed impressed, but did she see any other strong fighter before this? Not that we know of, so her opinion of him is not really useful to us. Based on what we saw this far, how strong do you think he is compared to Purple? Stronger? Weaker? He did kill the dragon while Purple's spell did nothing. But maybe that's a rock paper scissors type situation. Maybe the dragon is just really resistant to magic, but not as much to melee attacks. How strong even is it? We hardly have anything to compare it with. We know it's strong, but so are mages. I'm not even sure if this is a failure on the storytelling side or deliberately left vague so that later on you can have characters be whatever you need them to be. Neither is a great option. We're about a quarter of the show in and we know very little about how magic works, how this martial arts stuff works, how powerful any of the characters are, to which some people commented on my previous video, well, it's just not that type of show. It's more of a chill show. You know, slice of life stuff. They just fought a dragon. They fought some man-eating creature. They fought some high-ranking demon and guess what? More demons are coming up next. So if you watch this show and your conclusion is, well, you know, it's chill, I think that's a huge fail on the side of the writer. I really doubt that's what he wanted you to take away from this. Before we move on, remember that see-through clothes spell? They use it for a small dick joke. Yeah. They try to go further north, but some border is closed. Frieren doesn't really mind, but Purple does, so she takes Stark to try and find a way to pass it. For some reason, they actually spend quite a bit of time checking for logical options. Very uncharacteristic for the show. Purple says that there's a magical barrier that won't allow them to fly over the gate, so they ask the trade guild if they still have access, because sometimes borders are closed but trade is still allowed. When they say no, they ask people on the black market. All quite logical. I'm impressed. Wait, the fuck? Those Battlemanes are supposed to be twice as tall. That's it, I take it back. Fuck the show. Next, they find Frieren hiding from the guards who are looking for her. They find her, apologize, and then the big shot of the city also like, oh, you are Frieren, right? Sure, you can pass. And the episode ends with them walking off while Frieren is complaining she wanted to stay for longer. For one, I'm not sure what's stopping you. It's not like they booted you out, they're fans of yours. Tell them you got some business to conduct here and they'll for sure hook you up with a place to stay and all that. But more importantly, was everything earlier pointless? I'm guessing it's for a joke? I'm honestly not sure. I can certainly see how you could make a joke about wasting all that time, but they kinda don't. Maybe it's just more of a haha what a funny situation, but to me it's frustrating more than anything. Even if it was for a joke, you wasted half a bloody episode on this. I even forgot this chapter existed. When it started, I thought it's a different later episode where they get stuck in one such city and the guards arrest Frieren. I was actually surprised when the episode ended. What even is there to this episode? A joke about some ice cream? Purple getting mad because she doesn't want to hang out here for too long? What sane editor looked at this and was like, sure, let's keep that in. Well, at least this ends the first quarter. Wait, no, because this show got 28 episodes for some reason and not 24. God damn it. Episode 7 starts with a flashback about Frieren getting another Flamen fake book. The party questions if she was even real and not just some fairy tale about the founder of humanity's magic. And Frieren goes like, fairy tale, huh? It's been long enough. I'm probably the only one who remembers her face. Which, while a bit forced, it is quite a nice reveal and a bit of a seed to plant about who Frieren really is. Or at least it would be if we didn't learn that she was a student of hers like 3 episodes ago. Remember what I said about planning? Tell me with a straight face that this shouldn't have been before that chapter. Next there's a joke about Frieren waking up early for once. Next they're clearing the road of some boulders. Stark asks why not just leave the cart over, and Frieren says that doing so wouldn't help the next people coming along. You're rather selfish, Stark. Now, while this is technically in line with his personality, because maybe he just didn't think of that, I don't like this interaction because it has a good chance of painting the wrong picture, which is especially annoying given how much they harp on him being a nice guy. I know some people are going to complain about me pointing this out, but for any aspiring writers out there, don't ignore the small stuff. Getting right interactions like this is just as important as the big plot points, because you'll have far more of these than you will have plot twists and reveals, so they add up. Yes, the interaction is technically witty and lies, but does it get across a point that you want it to get across? In real life, some things can be jacked up to just waking up on the wrong side. But in fiction, you have to be careful with things like that. We spend far less time with these characters than we do with real people. And little interactions are gonna be examined more than they are in real life. Stark goes like, hey, why was the red light in just this area? Which is an odd question. It's a steep fucking cliff. It's not exactly surprising for some rocks to fall, but of course the question is weird because it's a prompt for some exposition. Oh, the Northerners have been fighting in this area with demons, so probably a skirmish caused this. Look at that cliff! Look at it! It's very likely that some rocks just fell because, I don't know, gravity? No? Oh, it was demons, was it? No. This isn't getting on my nerves just because it's some shitty dialogue or because it's some pointed exposition that I really don't think we even needed. This is getting on my nerves because of how easy it would have been to avoid this problem. If you insist on that exposition, instead of a landslide that's essentially to be expected eventually when your road looks like this, have there be a giant crater in the middle of the road. Or have the road go through a forest, and in one section there's a bunch of broken trees blocking the road. But a lot of them in a small cluster, with everything around unaffected, to indicate it was not the wind. Preferably have the trees splintered and even charred. Then it would have been perfectly acceptable for him to be like, yo, the fuck happened here? Easy to fix mistakes, just get on my nerves. They clear the road going down, have a flashback, and for some reason, throwaway character number 5 is probably the dumbest one yet. He sees an elf. He knows she's an elf because he says so. They talk about how rare elves are. He sees a statue of the hero's party that includes Frieren and doesn't put 2 and 2 together. Does she have a spell that causes that? Is that the takeaway here? They stay the night and then the next day they leave. I'm almost tempted to call this throwaway city, but none of the others were particularly important either, so it's not like it's all that different really. And now, an unclear amount of time after he joined, presumably weeks, Stark finally asks, hey, by the way, where are we going? Frieren goes, heaven. And Stark says, now that sounds fun. What the fuck is the point of this interaction? Why'd you have it now? I don't understand. Usually it'd be because they wanted to tell us something. But we knew this already. Is it in case we forgot? The fuck is this? No, this is only the first half of episode 7, but the other half starts one of the few multi-episode arcs, so I'll stop here and leave that for the next time. This clip is long enough as it is. So, I want to ask you guys something. What the wait, no. Well, yes, but more importantly, what so far can you point out that's well done? I kinda like the dwarf and the messages associated with his sins, but they aren't most fine. They're not all that good, and none of the other characters come anywhere near. Stark is somewhat nice, but other than that, the rest are either bland or outright annoying. Purper's arc, if we can call it that, is about her wanting to learn magic to become self-sufficient before the priest guy dies. Also known as simply a functioning adult. So while she becomes stronger, very little else about her as a person changes. It also doesn't really come into play after episode too. So as a goal, it's only really a level or two above wanting to drink water. It's not particularly interesting. It doesn't impact the plot at large, and most of it is achieved by having characters monologue exposition. At most, you can say that it achieves some amount of characterization. We know more about her. But again, we learn that she wants to be a functioning adult. Most people want that. With dialogue, I mostly complained about it being either exposition, or unnatural because it's meant to prompt exposition, or how it's just inefficient. But that's only how far I can go, because there just aren't many scenes that you can even analyze. There's that scene of Purple convincing Star to fight the dragon, but there's little conflict there and it's rather short. There's no Tywin and Olenna scene I can go knee deep into. All of it is just an excuse, not even a means, but an excuse to move the plot forward. Remember on the Ghosts episode I mentioned little lines with huge implications? In A Song of Ice and Fire, or Game of Thrones, there's a scene where a guy is learning to control his visions of the past, and one of his teachers warns him to not call out to the dead, which is a very heavy line because it implies something would happen if he does. What exactly, we don't know, we can only speculate, but something would happen and probably it'd be bad, because you don't warn people if there's nothing to worry about. The closest we got to that is Frieren mentioning she got used to hearing her master beg for her life. But that's not really world building, it's just tells us a bit about their relation. And speaking of world building, my god does it suck. Again, Windigo, done in 6 minutes. And even worse, all of it done with mainly exposition. It's all so shallow and disjointed. Think about it. What here interacts with anything else? In Ice and Fire, there are these white trees with red leaves called weirwoods. There are also ice zombies and white walkers, which are different things, oddly enough. There are also children of the forest, which are something between elves and the fae. There are also greenseers, magical humans with the ability to see from the eyes of animals and even control them. How do these interact? Well, according to the theorists at least, the White Walkers are spirits that used to live in a hive mind inside of the weirwood net. They were kicked out of the trees by greenseers, who took over the trees with magic learned from the children of the forest. So the White Walkers now use a corrupt version of the same magic to take over bodies of slain foes. All of these creatures interact as if they were, I don't know, part of the same world. If I was pressed to find something in Frieren, I guess mages and elves are connected because humans learn magic from the elves. Other than that, the dragon doesn't interact with anything. The Nut Windigo is on its own. The weird tree monster is never mentioned again. With Ice and Fire, the hardest part about finding connections is managing to shut the fuck up about it. The Starks are theorized to have blood of the whites in their line, which is what gave them their Greenseer's ability. Their house is associated with direwolves, which are likely creatures they used to warg into, and it's not at random. Greenseers have an easier time warging into creatures similar to themselves, and since direwolves are also magical to some degree, they are the logical choice. The list goes on and on and on. In Frieren? Go ahead. Try. I want to end by making it very clear that I have nothing against people that enjoy this show. Couldn't even say that right. What I have a disagreement with is people who claim this show to be good. It's not. It has no right being as praised as it is. To that, some people told me that it's normal for newer shows to get high up and then dip, sometimes mentioning the species review thing. But it's been almost a year since the show ended, and the score is according to 500,000 reviews. People seem to actually believe this to be true, and that worries me. Partly because maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe there's something here I don't see. If there is, please point it out, because no one so far did.